Hello guys, gals, non-binary pals, and waterfowls. It's me, Big Mike, and welcome to my Halloween video. Only, it's not Halloween yet, but it can be with the power of imagination. Anyway, to celebrate the occasion, I wanted to share some folklore from my home state of North Carolina, like I did last year. But this year, because of Hurricane Helene, I wanted to share some folklore from the mountains of North Carolina as a tribute to that beautiful, yet often mysterious part of the Old North State. Unlike in my videos last year for Halloween, in this year's video at the end, I'll give you some analysis on the story. And before we get too far into things, I just want to remind you lovely guys, gals, non-binary pals, and waterfowls, I do have a Ko-fi account, and for the time being, any donation I receive will go towards helping me to build a better PC or to buy a better PC. And so this will allow me to do different types of videos, to play different types of games, also to maybe collab with some of my friends. Now, if you can't or you don't want to, I completely understand. Money's tight and time's hard for many people. But if you can make a donation, it would greatly help my channel. So without further ado, let's get to talking about the demon dog of Valle Crucis. In order to fully understand this story, we first need to discuss a bit about both the history and the geography of Valle Crucis. Valle Crucis is a little town set high in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Its name means Valley of the Cross, which refers to 3 rivers that converge, creating a cross shape. It has been described as simultaneously being just 8 miles away from Boone, North Carolina, and yet a lifetime away. The morning mist lingers longer in the Valley of the Cross than elsewhere in the mountains, and even on sunny days the town has a quietness to it that seems to set it apart from the rest of the world. The town was founded in 1842, and the legend involves St. John's Episcopal Church, which was established in 1862. It's an old stone church located along Highway 194 just on the edge of town, where among the leaning graves in the churchyard cemetery, something that could not possibly be from this world steps in and out of the shadows. Now, let's get into the story. It happened one time that 2 young men were driving along this road around midnight. It was a clear night and the moon was full, bathing the valley in an eerie white glow. As their car turned a corner, passing the old church, the 2 young men saw a shadow leap out from behind one of the graves and into the road in front of them. Swerving to avoid whatever had landed in the road, the driver slammed his foot on the brake and pulled off into the side of the narrow road. Wondering what he had almost hit, he craned his head around over his shoulder to see what was in the road. It was a dog, but not an ordinary dog. This was a dog as tall and as wide as a full-grown man, covered with bristling black fur and bearing its massive yellow teeth. And the animal's eyes were glowing, not reflecting light like a dog's eyes will do, but actually glowing, burning with a smoldering red light that seemed to have about it something of the very fires of hell. The one young man turned to the other and asked, "Do you see that?" "No," his friend replied, "and neither do you." The animal began to walk towards their parked car. By mutual and unspoken agreement, the driver lifted his foot off the brake and slammed it down on the accelerator. They roared off down the mountain road, taking the hairpin turns and twists of the road at 60, 70, 80 miles an hour. It was only when the driver looked in the rearview mirror that he realized the dog was still following them and keeping up with them and even gaining on them. Panicked and expecting the jaws of the dog to wrap around the bumper of the car and drag it back into hell, the driver gave one final push on the accelerator, and just as the beast was about to catch them, the car leapt over the bridge, the water just below where the streams meet and across, and the dog stopped following them. They watched it fade into the distance and wondered what supernatural law it was that the animal was obliged to obey that kept its territory limited to the boundaries of the water. The 2 young men drove into Boone and went to the local Waffle House, since it was the only place around that was open 24 hours, and they both knew that neither one was going to sleep that night. And that's it, fam. Or at least that's where I planned this to be it. And going into this video, this is where I plan to start giving my thoughts on the story, as this is where the story I grew up with ended. But it seems the legend lives on. As a few years ago, a guy went on NPR and gave his story of 2 encounters he had with the demon dog of Valle Crucis. And what follows in the next 2 sections are going to be his story. There exists an old legend about 2 young men who encountered what is known locally as the demon dog of Valle Crucis. Their stories of an otherworldly pursuit of their vehicle by a phantom canine whence appeared from behind an old stone church on the outskirts of the town, St. John's Episcopal. I was 10 years old and excited for another winter at the family mountain house. We didn't own it, but with Grandma and all of the families on Dad's side, we could afford to rent it once a year. The house is located outside of Valle Crucis off Old 194. To get to the access road, you drive right past St. John's Episcopal and the accompanying cemetery, the supposed stalking ground of the demon dog. Of course, I wouldn't learn of the old legend until years later in college. For 8 years, I had no idea that I wasn't the only one to see it. The first year we ever rented that house, it dumped almost 2 feet of snow, and in the years since, it has been disappointing by comparison. This year was supposed to be a big one, and it was scheduled to hit our vacation week. As you might guess, myself and my cousins were so excited to learn there was ample snow coming. But first, we had to stock up. Everybody needs milk sandwiches, right? That night, as it was getting dark and the first flakes started to fall, it was decided that a grocery run needed to happen. My uncle volunteered to drive into nearby Boone and pick everything up. I asked to go too because he's my favorite uncle. A funny guy, always quick with a dad joke or a prank. I figured if nothing else, I could get some good laughs out of the short trip. We worked down the gravel drive and eventually hit 194 and took the left to start heading towards the main valley. Now fully dark out, we passed St. John's Episcopal, the old stone church sitting quaintly there among the dark woods. I can't tell how far after the church it came upon us, unleashed itself to say the least, with every pun intended. I didn't notice a thing, being a kid and all, not at first anyway. The first thing I did notice was my uncle adjusting and persistently checking the rearview mirror. The expression on his face was concerned, if not dire. Something was not right. We continued about our way, and I noticed our speed increasing to a level not quite safe for such a mountainous area. We were probably trucking 60 down Hairpin Lane. About the time I realized something was wrong, I looked at my uncle. I'd never seen real fright on a grown man's face until then. He was looking in the mirror as much as at the road. I turned and looked. Behind the truck was a pair of eyes, red but not like glowing red, and they were burgundy without any illumination. It's not something easily explained with language. It was like 2 smoldering embers burning, and they locked me in. I came to a few seconds later, though it could have been an eternity and a half in my mind. Time had done something wrong. There was a knocking, right on the back window of the cab of his truck. Whatever had been following us was in the truck bed. I knew it, and he knew it. I felt the pickup lurch as he gunned the throttle. I was holding out hope that it was a prank, that my other uncle was the one cackling his ass off in the back of the truck, that it was a sick joke I wasn't ready for, but his face suggested that he was in the boat with me. Then I heard the knock on my window. Whatever this was, it was now essentially floating beside us at dangerous speeds for such a road. It was tapping my window, beating on it. I looked over at my uncle and he just looked past me and out to whatever lay beyond. He told me not to look. Whatever happens, he said, do not look out that window. I did not look. It would be years before I learned what he saw. And that's where his first story ends. And what follows is his second story. It was 4 years later when I had my second encounter with the demon dog of Valle Crucis. I was 14 years old, At the time, I had been allowed to bring a friend. My sister did as well, considering our older cousins were away at school, and we had the extra room at the mountain house. My friend Stephen is still my best friend, even though we're grown men. I've known him since I was 3, and he's the first person I remember playing with. We understand each other on an almost telepathic level. I took Stephen with me that year, and we were enjoying yet another snowy trip to the lodge. We were snowboarding like things possessed in the backyard of the property, and we were in hog heaven as far as we were concerned. One afternoon, we all piled into my grandmother's van, a touring van somewhere between a Honda Odyssey and a full-blown RV. I know some of you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, we picked our way down the gravel drive onto Old 194. We crossed through Valle Crucis and into Boone, North Carolina, where the whole clan of us enjoyed a meal at the Daniel Boone Inn. If you ever get the chance, eat there. We left the restaurant at around 8:45 and began the trip back to the house. I was in the back with my friend. Not back seats, just in the back cargo area of the van. Our main view was out the back window. In the back passenger seats were my little sister and her friend. Up front, my mom, dad, aunt, and uncle. My uncle was driving. The rest of our crowd had gone ahead in a smaller vehicle and were not in sight. We were about 3/4 of the distance to the house and had just passed St. John's Episcopal Church. Then the van just stopped. The entire engine just crapped its pants, it seemed. But I wasn't fooled. I'd seen this trick before. My uncle loved to stop on that desolate road and pretend we were stranded. He'd get out and look around confused. "Well, kids, it looks like we're stuck out here." But no such joke nor punchline was to follow. He didn't laugh at our terror and restart the van. He just sat there and looked at my dad. The look on his face was not jovial. It didn't seem like a joke this time. But I played along. I nudged my friend with my elbow and gestured my head towards my sister and her friend in the van seats ahead of us. It was as if to say, "Watch this. It'll be funny." But it was not funny. When I nudged him, he made no response. He had his eyes dead affixed to that back window, as if he was in a trance. Then I saw it too. Behind the vehicle and just beyond the light of the brakes, there was this thing. It had a head and the scruff of a great black wolf. The body was of a man, almost, though the arms were too long, and it was standing upright on 2 muscular legs. It just didn't make any sense. But whatever it was, it had my friend's deadlock through the eyes, and he was absolutely mortified. About that time, my mother saw it too. At least I think she did, though she won't talk about it to this day. All I heard was her screaming for my uncle to start the car and move. The van rumbled a few seconds later. We started back down this old road towards the house, and all the while, me and Stephen are looking out that back window. What we saw makes me shudder to this day. The creature dropped down and was running behind our vehicle on unnatural 4s. The way it ran was so fucked up, I still lose sleep. Like it was running ahead of time. It was so smooth and graceful, but I'll never forget how disturbing it was in its locomotion. Nothing natural should move that way. Watching it run locked me in, and everything around just kind of melted away. The worst part was that we weren't losing it. We were doing an easy 60 miles an hour on this desolate highway, but it was right there behind us, right behind the van. Its face was like an exaggerated cartoon caricature of a wolf, but it was all too real. It was like something out of a nightmare. What I remember the most are the eyes, like 2 cigar embers, but with yellow, irises unmoving and a deep, dark black pupil in the center of each hellish orb. They were transfixing, hypnotic. I guess maybe the fear overwhelmed me, because the next day I woke up in my bed at the mountain house. It was morning. To this day, it takes Stephen quite a few drinks to discuss it, and even then he can't have a serious conversation about it. I think he hides behind humor, but I know he remembers it just as well as I do. It would be over 10 years before I brought up these experiences to family. It seems a mighty touchy subject, but I did manage to talk to my uncle about it. What he saw out the window that night, so many years before I had seen the exact same thing I saw behind the van a few years later, we both know what we saw. Even though my mom just says it was a large wolf, it wasn't just a wolf. Stay out of the valley at night. And now I'm going to share my thoughts on this story. In doing my research for this video, I learned that this legend originated in the 1860s, and originally it told of the townsfolk discovering the grisly remains of several people in the woods near the church, apparent victims of an animal attack. The minister of the church reportedly used the fear generated by this event in his sermons, telling the people that Satan had taken the form of an animal and killed the unrepentant. Therefore, all who sinned may be at risk of such a fate. This story passed down through generations evolved and became a warning that mothers told their children to keep them in after dark. Now, there's a bit of debate on the exact nature of this creature, most interpreted to be a hellhound, though there is a sizable minority opinion that believes it could be a werewolf. I tend to interpret the demon dog as being a hellhound, and for those who don't know, a hellhound is a mythological hound that embodies a guardian or servant of hell, the devil or the underworld. Hellhounds occur in mythologies from around the world, with the best known examples being Cerberus from Greek mythology, Garmar from Norse mythology, and the black dogs of English folklore, and the fairy hounds of Celtic mythology. Physical characteristics vary, but they are commonly black, anomalously overgrown, supernaturally strong, and often have red eyes or are accompanied by flames. And based on the description, I think it was inspired by the hellhound that appeared in Welsh folklore called the Gwyllgi. Let's compare their descriptions. The Gwyllgi is described as a mythic dog from Wales that appears as a frightful apparition of a mastiff or black wolf, similar to a dire wolf, with baleful breath and blazing red eyes, while the demon dog of Valle Crucis is described as a vicious, all-black, hulking beast of supernatural size and possessing red, sometimes yellow, glowing eyes. The only thing lacking is the breath. But then again, in all three of the stories, no person gets close enough to describe the breath. And that's probably a good thing. Another point that makes it seem likely that the Gwyllgi served as inspiration for this story is that Welsh culture did have some impact on the area. I was not able to find any direct mention of Welsh people being in Valle Crucis, but Welsh architecture was influential there. For example, the Holy Cross Episcopal Church was modeled on a now-defunct 12th century medieval monastery in Wales, whose name just so happens to be Valle Crucis Abbey. So these are my thoughts, but I would love to hear what you think. Do you think the demon dog of Valle Crucis is real? Regardless, do you think it's a werewolf or a hellhound? There are a world of hellhounds out there in folklore and mythology. Do you agree with my identifying it with the Gwyllgi? Or do you think another hellish dog better matches its description? Please let me know in the comments below. Right, so I want to give a special thanks to Fran, who does a wonderful job of doing my art. A special thanks to all of my friends on Twitter. I couldn't be here without you all, and a special thanks to all of you for watching this video. Please like this video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, and please leave me a comment below and let me know what you think. And if you like my videos, please subscribe and turn your notifications on. Until next time, fam, remember, just be yourself and you'll be awesome. Peace out!